Welcome to Financial Detox. I'm Jason Labrum. Today we are talking about everything estate planning, and we want you to not forget your estate plan. In studio, we have Alex Klingensmith as usual, and myself, Jason Labrum. Hey, Alex, what's up? Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me again. Every time.
Here we go. Our consistency is off the charts. We did a show last week. We're doing a show this week. I mean, this is the real deal. Financial Detox is here.
I like it. I think it's good. I'm not a social media guy, as you know, but I was telling this to somebody the other day, maybe it was this week even, that now people are like, oh, I saw your podcast. And I'm like, where? They're like, Instagram, because I'm not on Instagram, so I can't see what's happening. But so I do feel like... You might
need to get on just so you can see what's happening.
I don't know. I kind of like it this way. It's mysterious to me, like what's happening out there.
It's mystery. All right.
But I think it's cool. I didn't like it at first because I wasn't used to that, you know. My wife is used to that, meaning like we go hang out with friends and like, oh, I saw that you went here and there and did this thing. And I'm like, I didn't even know. How did you know that? And usually it's social media. But I think it's cool. I think what we talk about is important and useful. And this topic today is very near and dear to me. So I think we should dive in.
I think we should. So don't forget your estate plan. What we do at IDA Wealth, which is a part of Financial Detox. Financial Detox is our consumer education brand. We help people hopefully avoid toxic advice, manage their wealth for maximum impact. What does that mean? Like maximum impact to me, after doing this for 25 years, we see a lot of people who create wealth, but yet they don't really live their life. They don't maximize their life, whether it's philanthropically, whether it's travels, giving to kids, enhancing the lives of those around them. And that's sad, right? You work so hard, you create wealth, and you're just not maximizing that. And it happens all the time. One of the best ways to do that is by building a comprehensive financial plan, by not making mistakes. And what happens with the financial plan and not making mistakes is you can kind of set yourself free. We call it true financial peace of mind at our wealth management firm. And with true financial peace of mind, you know you can spend a certain amount of money and you can live the life you want, and you stress test that, and you continue to stress test it, all cash flow and all financial analysis. And it's a really cool feeling to see, a really cool experience to see people be set free. Even today, Alex, I was in a meeting with a client who just sold his business, and he's selling the 3 buildings associated with that business. And I don't think he's ever really had faith that he can spend as much money as he can spend. And so therefore that's caused him to, I think, live below his means to a point that he's not maximizing his life. And I think today we were actually able to show this client through the planning process and talking about estate plans too, which is, don't forget your estate plan, which we're going to talk about on the show. But you know, that he has plenty of money, he can do everything he wants, and he really can do it without worrying about stock market. What's the stock market doing today? What's the bond market? It just doesn't even matter for him, especially over the short term. And we started talking today about you're going to leave a lot of money behind your heirs. So it became an estate planning conversation. So once you get past the basics of I have money, I've built a portfolio, I'm going to invest it right, I have the right psychology of money and behaviors around investing, and it works well. Now you got to start thinking about the estate aspect of that. How are those assets titled? How are they going to transfer to your heirs or the people you want, your beneficiaries? And who's going to help facilitate that transfer, right? Imagine if you're incapacitated, whether it be just mental disability, or when you're dead, somebody has to facilitate the end of life events. And that's not fun to talk about a lot of times, but man, when you plan it ahead of time, it can be really cool to know that I've set this up, it's going to work, and my money's going to go where I want it to go. My assets are going to be handled the way handled the way I want them handled.
That client that you're mentioning from earlier today, do they have children?
Yes.
So I think this is what I've learned over the years, and I think it's probably because I just enjoy this part of it. I don't think anyone enjoys talking about when they're going to die or if they become sick, too sick to be able to, manage their own affairs mentally or physically. But if you start, I like to start it with the story, right? The family story and the governance structure, which are fancy words for just saying how did you get your stuff? How did you earn the money, and how did you save it? And what are the family values associated with that? What do you care about as a family? And the answers are not always the same, like for one family to the next, right? And that is a more fun conversation for maybe your client and his wife to to share with the kids that, you know, this is what we believe in. This is how we did it. In this industry or this profession or as a business owner or as an executive or as attorney or doctor, whatever it is, right? And then you start to make some decisions around what do we like to invest in and why, and who do we trust? Who are our trusted professionals? And I think that sets a pretty good foundation for how decisions are made for the family, right? And you're not even talking about dying yet. Everyone's still alive in this conversation, right? Which is far more enjoyable, I think, for people to be able to talk about it with a guided advice. Like we guide these conversations, right, Jason? That's our role.
We actually call it multi-generational estate planning process. That's really important because a lot of times people don't have these conversations, right? They don't have the conversation about what does money mean to us as a family? What is wealth? Create a family crest, create a family mission statement around wealth. Is it to accumulate as much as we want because we think money makes the person? Or is it, to enhance the lives of not only ourselves, but those around us? Mm-hmm. Having a mission statement around that is really critical, and it can set the tone for not only educating your kids about money and what it's for and how it can benefit yourself and those around you, but it also really it's the precursor to setting up a good estate plan. Yeah. And the saddest part of this is, not to get all down, but every time somebody passes, it seems like, let's take an average of 3 kids. Yeah. There's one spouse or one kid, one child, one beneficiary who undoubtedly needs that money immediately. And I'm like, I need that check. I need the check. I need the money from mom or dad's estate. And I'm like, did you know they were going to die? Like, what if they didn't die? What would you have done? How would you have come up with that money? And gosh, it seems like that happens all the time. And we've seen, unfortunately, dozens, if not hundreds of situations where we've been able to assist clients go through this process. But I think let's get to some bullet points and make this really punchy, right? Okay, I want to make this valuable and punchy. And there is some key points that you have to remember. And
I've got them here, actually. I'm actually cheating off of we have a multi-generational client engagement. It's a 3-chapter kind of engagement process. And
yes,
we do start with what I was mentioning earlier, that we do start with talking about the family story, we call it. And that's the origins and the legacy, the values and vision, cultural identity, intergenerational communication, and facilitation of that. And then the governance structure. And then the bullet points are, the first thing you really want to do is start having conversations and finding out, like, what level of privacy do you want as a family? Like, is everything on the table, or are we not talking numbers? We're just talking concepts. And then you want to start to put together the actual documents, right? So that the people that are in charge, so your client and his wife are the ones that they're in charge. They're leading this family, right? They would put together an estate plan with an attorney, right? Guided usually by us. So it's a meeting where we would actually already have the financial plan built out with the balance sheet, all the assets and liabilities and income streams and expenses. And then we'd put together the estate plan. So what are the parts of the estate plan? You've got a will, right? You've got a living trust. A revocable living trust is usually at the core of that. You've got powers of attorney. You've got advanced healthcare directives. And then within that, you start to make decisions that are really hard and no one wants to make, is who's in charge when we're gone. Yeah. Right. And if you have minor children, you have guardianship. For me personally, that was my wife and I's probably biggest one to have to figure out together.
Who's going to take care of your kids?
Yeah. It's weird. And the person in charge of the money might not be the same person in charge of taking care of the kids even, right? You could separate those powers as well, depending on capabilities or what your options are.
Yep.
And then we found that once you make all these decisions, then you have to decide how you're going to communicate it to those people that you wrote down. Hopefully you ask them permission first, or you don't just spring it on them. Like, hey, by the way, it can be a privilege and honor. It also can be a big burden too, right?
I've seen more of the latter, that it's a big burden where somebody will put their friend, and they're in a second marriage and they have kids from both marriages, and they put their friend on as the successor trustee, and it's a disaster. And then the new widowed spouse ends up suing ex-husband or husband's best friend because the money's not going to her kids when it's just can be a total disaster. And that's one of the areas where we highly recommend you consider a professional successor trustee, a professional fiduciary that handles that successor trustee. But let's talk about all this. I'm going to back it up just a sec.
Yeah.
Probate. What is probate? And you've heard that word, and so many people attach probate to taxes. They think the probate has to do with paying less in taxes and it's only for rich people. But that is not the case. So probate is basically a court process that's appointed in California and a lot of other probate states, where if your assets are not titled clearly as to who they're going to go to next, either in joint tenants with rights of survivorship, a transfer on death, or a trust that identifies where the assets go, and you have more than, I think the number is 150,000 this year in California, give or take a dollar or two, but your estate will be triggered and go into probate. And that means that the courts of California are going to charge you not only time for being in the courts, but filing fees and all kinds of other costs, while they decide what they think you wanted to do with your money. And by 27 years of experience, I can tell you there isn't a single person I know that goes, that's great. I want California to decide what to do with my, not only money, but my house and my cars, my collectibles, my guns, my gold, my jewelry, whatever it is. Nobody wants that to happen.
And it's expensive to the estate. I've heard numbers up to 5, even 6% of the overall estate. So if you have a $2 million estate, that's real money that's going to California to help you decide those things, right?
And it's typically a 9 to 18 month process, but it can also be much longer depending on the complexity of the estate. So probate, very bad. You don't want to deal with probate. You don't want to have it, but it's very, and by the way, you mentioned something earlier about privacy, Alex, on our multi-generational plans. We talk about how important is privacy. If you're in probate, it's public. So every single thing you own and the value of it and everything becomes public record. So
that's how we know about all those famous people we were talking about before the show in prep, right?
Right.
They went to probate.
Right. We have, I mean, you think back to Prince, Aretha Franklin, several cases where high profile people you would think that had plenty of money would have an estate plan, a trust and or a will, but they didn't. And in several cases, you lose as much as 50% or more of the estate can just be totally taken away for estate tax.
Right.
And the death tax. So it's crazy. So things that will trigger probate, and the problems that you can run into, or the things you got to watch out for, is if there's an account or something that's in one person's name. There's no joint owner. There's no transfer on death. It's not in the title of the trust. That is counting as assets that could trigger probate. Anything not held in a trust is subject to that calculation and putting you into probate. And if there's not a specific beneficiary. So one of the cool things about IRAs and or an annuity or something that has a beneficiary, that's got a beneficiary. You don't have to worry about that.
Probate. It's too bad houses don't have
houses
named beneficiaries.
Right?
That's the most common thing to go into probate. I bet.
Yes, because it's the biggest asset in California, especially.
And many people own them and they don't have trusts that would solve that problem. And by the way, creating a trust doesn't mean you've solved the problem. Once you create that trust and you have this document and all these pieces together, then you have to take the steps of transferring ownership, right, into the name of the trust versus keeping it. How many times have we seen that where the trust goes unfunded?
Let's say that you take the first step and you say, okay, now I've listened to Financial Detox. I know that probate is bad. I don't want to go to probate. So how can I avoid it? You have a will and a trust. But then the first step of once you're done with that will and trust is making sure that all the assets are titled in the name of the trust. So if it's Jason Labrum Trust, I need to put all my assets, my house, my cars, my investment accounts that are non-IRAs need to be in the name of the trust. And now when I pass on or become incapacitated, pass on in particular, everybody knows where my money's supposed to go, and the state of California doesn't have to bring in the courts to try and decide what I wanted to do with my money.
The next part too that I know most people miss, because this is why they've hired us to help them, is let's say you've done all this correctly and you put together an estate plan. It's got all these documents in there. You've done all the right things, but you haven't shared this information with the next generation. And that's probably more common than not, right? So good job. You did the first step really well. Step two, I believe, and this is an opinion-based thing because some people disagree with me, and that's totally fine. You know, everyone's got different family dynamics going on. I understand that. But I think, wouldn't it be nice if the next generation was invited into the conversation and they can ask for help? Like, how did you get your first job? It's like career coaching, it's debt management, it's cash flow, saving for a home. These types of topics that are generationally specific sometimes, but also it's part of that value structure. And then effectively being able to transfer the information from one generation to the next. You'd think it'd be common sense, but I mean, it's not, right? You don't always sit down with your parents and ask them like all these questions. You just kind of assume you're going to figure it out on your own maybe. But wouldn't it be nice if it was a guided conversation? Maybe even if you had an advisor team that was multi-generational itself, like ours. Like how cool is that, right?
It's very cool. And I think that it's worth taking the time and energy to set it up.
And then I think what you do, you get a little more specific, because then what you're going to end up doing is building out individual financial plans for each member of the family, meet them where they're at in life. And this then solves those problems proactively that happen so often when someone passes away. I mean, just before the show, we were kind of sharing some of these horror stories, really, where it tears families apart. Because, and you mentioned one, Jason, yourself, that 1 out of 3 siblings probably needs the money immediately. Why is that? Because they weren't given the opportunity or the right platform to learn how to kind of follow the family's future in terms of how wealth is treated, right? And it's not all about money's not everything. It really isn't. But some families care about it more than others. Some families have dedicated maybe more time to education and to careers than others. That's why I think it's really important that you customize this by family to meet them where they're at, right?
Yeah. And there is some good news on the horizon regarding all this. There was a law that was actually signed, a California law signed into effect called the Assembly Bill AB 2016. And that is where they're talking about excluding a primary residence up to $750,000 from the probate process. And so there's some good news on the horizon. I mean, this has been a real problem. It's still not enough to say you don't need to get a trust and put your assets in the name of the trust, but there is some bright news on the horizon. That 750, I think, will be attached only to a primary residence, not other assets, but we'll see as the final bill comes into play here. It could be as early as April 1st, so it could be soon. So that's some good things. So let's summarize this, Alex. And if you wanted to have like some key points, right, to what you want to do to avoid this process. 1, talk to your family. Alex went through a few things. Understand what your purpose of money is and all that. Get into specific points. I think it's have a will and a trust, and fund it. If you have a will and a trust and you funded it, meaning you've put your assets in that title, that's a really big one. The other one that seems so simple, but keep your beneficiary designations updated. IRAs, 401ks, really good idea to take 401ks from previous employers where you used to work and roll those into your either new employer or roll those into an IRA, because then you don't have a bunch of accounts scattered all over the place. And you want to make sure the beneficiaries are updated. We had a recent case where somebody had just became a client. We're in the process of updating their beneficiaries, hadn't got it done, passed. It was the ex-spouse who was the beneficiary, not the current spouse. And that's a mess, right? So your beneficiaries matter. You want to check those. Those are going to be on IRA accounts, and they're going to be on any annuities, any qualified retirement accounts.
Life insurance.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to name the right people. Think about who you want to burden with this responsibility, because it is a burden, who you trust, who's knowledgeable financially. And if you don't have a person in mind, know that there are private fiduciaries, private successor trustees who come in and have to operate as a fiduciary and adhere to the law to basically execute what you've put down, you've put in your trust.
We know some great ones around town,
we do.
Actually. Yeah.
Yeah, even part of our business plan is to make sure we can facilitate that for clients. So you got to think about, I guess the fourth, if I'm going through a list here, you have to think about planning for incapacity and not just death. You mentioned this, Alex, but what about your memory loss, Alzheimer's, something like this?
Yeah, powers of attorney.
Nasty. So you need durable power of attorney, advanced healthcare directives. Who's going to make the decision on your healthcare? What if you're on life support and they don't know where to pull the plug? The cost could drain your entire estate because there wasn't a good healthcare directive. You should not forget digital assets. Some people these days have huge amounts of value and money in digital assets, crypto wallets, and so on and so forth. So don't forget those. Make sure everything's titled in the name of the trust. We talked about that one. And review it regularly because things change, right? Divorces unfortunately happen. Kids maybe go rogue and you need to take them out of the estate. Hopefully not.
That actually happens a lot too.
It does. Marriage, divorce, births, deaths, major purchases and assets. A lot of times people will buy a second home and forget to put it in the name of the trust, and boom, that can trigger probate and the whole thing's messed up. You also need to make changes periodically due to tax laws, and communicate with your family. Have a very clear plan. Let everybody know what's up. It creates less drama. Too many times we've seen family members start fighting. One example I can think of is 3 sisters, and they have literally, this has ruined their relationship because there's a big family farm, and the family farm actually takes money to run. It doesn't spit off income or make money. Of course, the sister who has no money and can't afford to put in to upkeep the farm wants to keep it. Mom and dad pass. But the sisters who have enough money that they could keep the place up and take care of it, they don't want it. Nobody really wants it except the one sister who can't afford to keep it up. So they're literally in maybe a never-ending battle. I mean, it's going to get litigious, right? With sisters over money because there wasn't clear communication with the family and there wasn't a really good plan. Last and not least, work with professionals. Estate planning and trust and stuff. This isn't DIY. This is not do it yourself. You really need help. Financial advisors like us at IDA, Financial Detox, we can help. We all oftentimes bring in the really high-powered estate planning attorneys who this is all they do, because they'll draft the documents, they'll verify what we're saying and doing, and it's a nice second set of eyes and some cross-checking.
Did you know, Jason, that we actually helped our team at IDA, our wealth advisors and the teams and the client service teams, we helped 24 families with this last year alone. 24
I didn't
families.
know it was 24. That's a lot.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, when we think about like our ideal client, this is not what we think about. However, what ends up happening is that people come to us in times of need. And when there's major life events taking place, and someone dying is a major life event, right? It's the least favorite one. Of course, retiring, selling a business, much more positive and exciting. But that, we talked about this before the show as well. I think I was talking to Brian and Sheena, but the emotions around losing someone are so much that the last thing you want to do is go through checklists and checklists of to-dos every day. It's busy work that might be kind of helpful sometimes, but the last thing you want to do is be on the phone with insurance companies or banks or whatever and dealing with all this, right? Having this team in place that is not only able to do it, but wanting to help, I think is really important. And not every advisor likes this kind of work. For whatever reason, we shine in these moments. We've always been good at this, I think, and it's awesome to have all the people that we have at IDEA now who are experts in their respective fields right here under one roof. It's awesome.
It is. I think we keep it short and simple today.
Yeah.
Don't forget your estate plan. Investments matter, markets matter, portfolios matter, financial planning matters, cash flow matters, but your estate plan might be the biggest thing in the end, and it's going to be the last mark that you leave either on your family or California probate courts and whatnot. So don't forget the estate plan. If you haven't done your trust in a long time, or you haven't reviewed it, or you did it a long time ago, review it. If you don't have a trust and you live in California, you probably need one. Reach out to us. We can help you get set up with the right attorney. And if you just think, oh, this is a lot and you want somebody to help manage it all, that's where we come in at IDA Wealth. And you can always check us out at financialdetox.com. I'm Jason Labrum.
And I'm Alex Klingensmith.
I got it that time. It's Financial Detox. Let's go. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next show.